Good afternoon. I'm El Paso County Commissioner Daryl Glenn. If I could get everybody's attention, please, we could get started here. Thank you very much for coming out. First of all, I want to, again, thank everybody for spending a couple hours with us today. I know we've heard a lot of things in the newspaper, on the media, with regard to some horse situations within the forest. And one of the things that I remember back when we had the Black Forest fire, I remember how important it was for the community to come together and have a discussion about topics that are typically a little bit sensitive for us to be concerned about. I mean, we are a family in the forest, and especially when you're dealing with horses, the horse family is unbelievable. So I think that we want to be able to come together and learn from one another. I do want to emphasize that today we are not going to be able to really get into topics with regard to the specific investigation. When the story came out, I think you've probably read my quote in the newspaper where in a 24-hour period I received about 1,500 emails globally. I mean, the last one I had was from South Africa. So this is a topic that really impacts a lot of people. But I want to make sure that we use this as a teachable moment, because I think we need to take a look, examine some of the things that are happening right now within our own community, and how do we prevent these types of things from happening in the future. So before we begin, I really want to thank the use of this facility. Elaine Gagne has been a champion. She's been working with us. Elaine, where are you? Thank you so much for everything that you've done. Will you please stand? Thank you so much. I really want to appreciate that. Is there anybody else I want to make sure we recognize?
No, just want to say his name.
Okay. I have assembled a panel, and people they're here to help answer any questions that you might have, but also to listen. So I'm going to go down the line. First of all, I want to make sure I recognize Representative Amy Stevens. She's been working with me from the very beginning on this particular issue, and she's kind of helped with the format of this particular meeting. So I want to start right here and just go down the line. If you could just introduce yourself and your office.
Sure, I'm Joe Stafford. I'm the Director of Animal Law Enforcement over at the Humane Society of the Pikes Peak region.
Sergeant Mitch Mahalko with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, Investigations Division.
I'm Lee Richards with the District Attorney's Office, 4th Judicial. I'm the Community Outreach Director and Public Information Officer.
I'm State Representative Amy Stevens, representing House District 19, which includes Black Forest.
Mark Gebhardt, El Paso County Development Services, regarding zoning for animals.
Stephen Claffey, I'm an assistant county attorney, not district attorney, but county attorney for Commissioner Glenn.
Tom Gonzalez, El Paso County Public Health, so to talk about water quality protection and disease prevention.
Jan McHugh-Smith, I'm the CEO at the Humane Society of the Pikes Peak region, and I'm here to talk about animal cruelty.
Okay. And do we have anybody here from the Department of Agriculture statewide? Aha! You want to come on up? Come on up. Join the family. We'll bring some chairs over here for you, since people are afraid to sit in the front row. And if you two could introduce yourselves, they'd greatly appreciate that.
I'm Scott Bedford, Department of Agriculture, Colorado Department of Agriculture.
I'm Dr. Kate Anderson, Department of Agriculture, Bureau of Animal Protection and Pet Animal Care Facilities Program.
So I think of how I want to start it off. This is really an informal, and Paul Lundeen is sitting here. Why don't you just go ahead and say hi?
Paul Lundeen, I'm a candidate for House District 19 and will eventually represent the Black Forest area if successful in my election.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is going to be real informal. I know town hall meetings can be a little stuffy. This isn't like that. We are filming this. The one thing that we want to do is give you an opportunity to provide us some feedback. If there are questions that our panel, if they can address that, they'll be able to do that. Again, we want to try to stay away from the specifics of the investigation. But if there are specific action items that come out of this meeting, we want to make sure that we follow up with that. This, again, is something that it's a start. I want to make sure that in the future we use this as an opportunity to kind of go forward to help people in the future. So we're going to open it up to you. There aren't any prepared statements. This is your opportunity. If you have any questions, comments, anything that you want to share with us, just raise your hand, I'll recognize you, and the floor is yours. And I know that you aren't bashful because I've already talked to at least 6 of you already. So I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I'll start picking people in the back. My family's sitting in the back, and I'm not picking them because. So go ahead. Yes, ma'am. Come up. Please stand up.
There's mics on both sides of the room.
It's right behind you,
Help
actually.
us in recording.
Okay, I'll do that.
Just take it off here?
No,
Oh, don't take it off. That would be
Just talking to it where it is.
Leave it where it is.
Right there, Steve, right there.
Okay, thank you.
I don't work for the county, but at least.
Let's not start by damaging materials here. My name is Mickey Althouse. Thank you for this town hall meeting, very much appreciated. I'm a member of the Kit Carson Riding Club, and we've been very eager to have some dialogue. I know that there's a group, I'm not part of that group, but there's a group that's looking at is our laws fitting for the things that are going on. So I know you don't want anything specific to the investigation, so I'll just keep it very high level. In cases like this, where you've got someone going out, maybe it's the end of the week, the end of the day, and it's going to involve additional agencies beyond the sheriff's department, has anyone taken a look at the workflow of something like that, the protocol for something like that, to see if there are any gaps where other agencies are involved in getting them involved? Do you know if there's currently someone looking at a workflow analysis when something like this happens and other agencies need to be brought in?
I would imagine that's going to be mainly for me, so I'll go ahead and address that.
Okay.
Let me give you a quick overview and a breakdown of how the call for service would usually be handled by the sheriff's office initially, and then how other agencies would get involved. So thank you for that question. Essentially, if a call for service were to come in, the first deputy to respond would be a patrol deputy. They make the initial observations. If they can get a hold of a property owner or the caretakers of the animals, they're going to make that initial investigation. If at that point in time it does appear that those animals are in danger, then it then becomes referred to our mounted unit. Now our mounted unit guys are, right now we actually have 3 investigators that are animal cruelty investigators within the office. 2 of them are level 2 investigators. One is a level 1. 2 of the guys that are on mounted, one is a level 1, one's a level 2. If this is an immediate case, that immediate notification would go through a patrol supervisor to the mounted unit supervisor. Mounted unit would be dispatched. If it's not a case of immediacy, there's no concern that the animals are going to die at that point, but there is a concern that there's either a feed issue or an issue with the actual abuse. Then those cases can also be referred through normal channels and be assigned to the unit for follow-up at a later time.
I'm sorry, can you clarify what the normal channels would be, please?
Sure. Basically, what would happen is a deputy would take the report. That determination would be made by the initiating deputy and or supervisor. And if at that point in time there is no immediacy to the call, they would refer that through to the mounted unit. So if it was, for instance, in your case, on a weekend, and it was determined that it was not an immediate issue, it may be assigned on a Monday. From that point on, I'm getting there.
Okay, that's fine.
But from that point on, if there was an immediate issue and the mounted unit were to come out and said, no, you know something, we have these animals need to be removed, or we need to get a vet in to take a look. At that point, they would either call in a vet and or we would get in touch with the Humane Society if it's within their jurisdiction as well. Investigations also has an animal cruelty investigator. He's been investigating these cases for about 7 years, and they generally would have him come in, take a quick look as well, and help make that determination what the next step is going to be. Now, to answer your question about other agencies, I have not run into a single time where any other agency has not been responsive to a request from our office. So if on a Friday night or a Saturday, our deputies get that initial call, to answer your question, ma'am, the notifications would go out to either a vet, Humane Society, any other agency that we've partnered with to ensure that those cases are handled appropriately at the right time.
All right, and then the mounted unit, are they schooled medically for that type of an emergency?
Actually, so you're asking about the training. So the training that our cruelty investigators have received, actually I just want to make sure I have this right. This is a certification through the University of Missouri. 2 of our guys are certified as level 2 equine cruelty investigators. One is a level 1. There is a full investigator as a level 3 as well. But that's the current certification, and they are nationally accredited, yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes.
You had your hand up? Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
I'm short. My name is Judy Tobias, and after this incident took place, several of us got together. We're all very longtime horse people, and we wanted to see what we could do to make it better. First of all, we need to enlarge this discussion to include all animals. Also, we need to leave emotion out of it and try to reach logical and achievable decisions. And I know this gentleman here has answered some of these questions, but currently there's 3 to 5 calls a week on animal complaints. The sheriff's office, from our perspective, does not seem to have the budget or the trained personnel to deal with the problem. Investigation takes a lot of time, work, and if the case goes to court, is even more time consuming and involves the DA's office in the process. We've seen background cases over a span of several years where we have seen that there is not a timely intervention. This is what we need. It's an ongoing problem. The choices are the Board of County Commissioners can change their contract with the Humane Society of the Pikes Peak region to include all parts of the county. Have the Sheriff's Office contact them within 24 hours maximum of the complaint. The response by the next business day should be the standard. Also, you need to have emergency people for weekends if the situation is life-threatening. An alternative solution is to work with the State Humane Society and have them do the investigations. I believe it's over 30 is the number of counties that take this approach. You could use a combination of these 2 things. Also, you could use the county animal rescue team volunteers to possibly take on the role of caring for the animals confiscated if rescue groups or the Humane Society can't take them. They could also act as the eyes and ears of the Sheriff's Office and the Animal Law Enforcement Agency. Either agency, either Humane Society could request veterinary assessment of animals' condition and ask for help if the Sheriff's Office, from the Sheriff's Office if required. On the second level of change, we'd like to attempt to change the state law, and this would require help from our local representatives to change the state law on animal abuse and neglect so that any aggravating factor, such as an animal injury or multiple animals involved, would be a felony with required prison time. Also, the state can mandate certain things from county agencies like they do with Health and Human Services. They could mandate that all animal complaints be looked into in a timely manner and reports could be sent to the state veterinarian or other appropriate state agency. Our goal on this would be to have proposed legislation ready to present at the next session of the state legislature. We recognize that any of these actions are going to require adequate funding, which needs to be addressed at the time the changes are adopted. I do have a couple of copies of what I wrote down if you want to have them.
Great.
Thank you.
And I would ask if any of our panel members want to go ahead and jump in before we recognize somebody else. I would just defer to them to speak.
Well, I think since we brought up state law, it would be important to address this part. And I'm also going to ask our state veterinarian, because I think that's important too. When I called the state veterinarian's office about this, and one thing that you will see throughout, we have extensive laws on the subject. Laws that actually I wasn't even as familiar with, but we have modeled some of our laws with animal, also with what we do domestically with children. And so in the instance, let's just say, and I'm not engaged in the investigation of this current situation, but so for example, someone is going to have to pay for their own assessment, the person who's being brought up on animal cruelty charges has to pay for their own anger management assessment and anger management, and the court has to look at every step of the way how the offenders have actually complied with what the court asked of them. And just like what happens when we take children from an abusive situation in their home, and when we talk about reforming laws, to the degree, this is to me a very sensitive issue, because to the degree we're going to help children in this county, and we don't do a great job of it, and to the degree that literally you can burn and maim your child and then as the offender get your child back, which by the way, folks, I have people in this district who take children every day, as foster parents in foster homes. And they have these children for 6, 7, 8 months, and then bam, they're back with their parents. Because the parent showed up at the last minute going, hey, I want my child, or I'm reformed, or I completed this course. So when we talk about animals, I'm just going to say to you, even as our laws have reflected some of this, can we tighten? Yeah, we should be able to. But to the degree you do this also for children, because this at the legislature will be the discussion. I think the entire family law needs to be reformed, just as I think you all here think we need to tighten up the treatment for animals. Now, the other thing is, and I'd like the weigh-in of our state vet's office, is you can be, there. We did pass in 07, 08, by the way, some of the more animal cruelty laws. Just like family court, every day and every year, they're going to need to be tightened. But the question becomes a registry, and can these people own animals again? And just like parents that have children who are in the court system, the odds are, yeah, they probably could on some level, okay? On some level, if they completed everything they did. At the same time, the law also says that if the court deemed this cruelty, and our DA's office can certainly weigh in on that, there can be jail time, there can be some time, but rare is that, I could be wrong, but rare is that opportunity, very rare is that opportunity. So you bring up excellent points. I want to also point out that the laws have been modeled as we do with family, in family court and with children. And so overall we must take, I think, a probably really wise approach. And I will defer now also to our DA and also to the state vet's office.
And while they're getting ready, if there are people that have questions, feel free to line up on the sides by the microphones. That way we can just alternate back and forth. Go ahead. Good.
Just to clarify, I am not the state veterinarian.
Yes, correct.
I am a veterinarian.
Yeah. Do we have another microphone, Dave, that we could
we
provide?
have the end mic? Is
Are we
it long enough that we could give it to them?
Yeah, why don't we just move this one?
Okay, here we go. Yeah, don't be bashful. You're on TV. Come on.
I don't have too much more to say. I think I agree with the representative that Colorado as a state has exceptionally good animal cruelty laws. in a lot of cases, the language is broad enough that we can use misdemeanor and felony, convictions sometimes, you know, when we feel it's necessary. So I don't think the language itself is that limiting in our cases. So, so I agree, we do have a good law now. It's fairly broad. It doesn't list a lot of really specific things, which we feel is a good idea. Helps us encompass more things. If you start listing things in that law specifically, then you have to account for everything. And sometimes we forget things. So being broad is a little bit better. And so from a veterinary perspective, I think we can do a lot with what we have now. Could we make them better? It's always worth discussion. We always need to be moving forward with what we do. So do you have any comments, Scott?
Well, the only other comment that I might add to that in relation to laws is that a few years ago, there's a law that required, I forget the title of it, disposition of dead animals, I think was the title of it. That was repealed a few years ago, and there's not a lot of people that know that. I don't know if the legislators, folks at Capitol, I don't know, but I don't know if they thought animals didn't die anymore, or why that law is repealed. Anyway, that's one law that I would kind of like to get reinstated, because it required people to dispose of their animals if they were within 1 mile of any residence or water source or things of that nature. I get calls rather frequently on that issue. I don't know, maybe you guys do too. I don't know, but I don't know if anybody else wants to comment.
I don't know anything about that. I'm not familiar with
I think while we're pausing, I mean, just for clarification, the information that's in the animal cruelty law itself is very broad, and I would echo what Dr. Anderson said, and it's good that it's very broad. The difference between a misdemeanor animal cruelty charge and a felony level animal cruelty charge is proving intent. So if it's an act of omission, meaning the person forgot to feed an animal, was unable to feed an animal, did not know that the animal had to be fed in order to survive, that typically is going to be a misdemeanor type of charge. But in order to have a felony charge, you have to be able to prove intent, that the person knowingly did something, and that's kind of a term of art, and maybe the sergeant can clarify that, but that's the difference between a felony charge and a misdemeanor charge under current statute. If convicted or charged with a felony, it is a class 6 felony. It's punishable by up to 18 months in jail, and there is a mandatory 90 days sentence that comes with a conviction of a class 6 felony. Now, does the court always order that? No, because of course that's the judge's responsibility to take the totality of the circumstances into account when looking for the best resolution. But just so everybody kind of has a more broad understanding of what the law currently does and does not do, and it will certainly vary by community to community how the DA's office wants to approach it. And certainly in our experience here in this county, and we work in a lot of counties, Dan May, our DA, and the staff.
Who just walked in, he's in the back, by the way.
Hello, Dan.
His staff has been absolutely phenomenal. I wish every other county would have the same conviction that his office does to pursuing animal cruelty, because this state would be a lot better place, but just my perspective. So
Okay, let me take another question. Go ahead.
Well, the first question was, what was the state statute for burying horses? Obviously, there is none anymore. And so these people committed no crime by not burying those horses. The second issue is going to be, were those horses emaciated? My vet, who happened to be the vet that saw those horses, not the one brought in by the sheriff's department, she saw those horses on that Saturday morning, and told me personally that she has called on far worse conditions, horses that were starving to death, and nothing was done. And yet, You have to be very careful here, ladies and gentlemen. I have 2 horses. Nobody wants to see horses abused. I don't want to see an ant abused. But you're getting into a political realm here and not reality. If you've ever lived on a farm, I'm from Illinois, how animals are somewhat dealt with after death can be different than you and I might feel. There is no law that we have to euthanize animals. We can't euthanize people, and yet we want to treat them the same as children. And these animals, it has been proven by Colorado State University, did not die of starvation. That test has come back. There was nothing wrong with how those horses died other than natural causes. And if you're not familiar with the fact that that area was spread, red slurry was spread over it last year during the fire up here. Red slurry has a great contamination to animals. And some of that information has now been provided to the county commissioners. I have a great deal of information on that. If you had animals in the area where this red slurry was spread, you should be very concerned that waterways, trees, everything was contaminated. And yes, the firemen are trained to say it's not a problem, but they won't give out the MSDS sheet, which is a very difficult problem. So do not jump to conclusions before you know the other side of the story. I happen to know it. I would be the first to jump against someone who horribly treated their horses. And I have seen it at AQHA shows, and so don't get on their bandwagon, because if you've gone to AQHA shows, you have seen horses beaten, and they don't do a damn thing about it. So the hypocrisy here has got to be looked at. If you want them to pass laws that are severe against people who may not have fed their horses quite as much as you did, and trust me, horses that you cannot see the ribs on are not healthy. They are a little overfed. It is healthy to see horses' ribs a little bit. And of course, the press took every advantage in showing you the worst possible scenario. But if this can happen to them, be sure it can happen to you. And be very careful in the laws that you want passed. Because I agree, we don't want to see animal abuse. I don't want to see child abuse. I don't want to see adult abuse. And that happens through our politicians and our laws every day. But know that we have got to protect our own. And you have got to get your emotions out of this and look at facts. And unfortunately, because the minute this happened, the police did not take those horses that night because they weren't underfed horribly. Like I said, my vet said she has seen far worse conditions, and the police did nothing. So don't put them under the bus until you know the whole story. And because these people are highly profiled, politically involved people, they are being tortured because of this. And again, if it can happen to them, it can happen to you. And there's a lot of things you don't know that has gone out here in the fire department and the fire, of which Terry Makita has caused the issues, and you are no longer protected. And if you haven't gotten your latest insurance bill, wait till you see it, because there are no fire protection codes out here anymore, and your insurance is going sky high. And these are issues that instead of handling them like they should have properly, they have stood back and jumped on the bandwagon because too many people complained. Well, don't we hire people to make laws reasonably and not emotionally?
Cheryl, I understand, I appreciate it.
Could we get your name, please,
Oh.
ma'am? I don't think you announced it. My name is Cheryl Glasgow. Thank you.
Well, just let me make a brief statement. Again, why we're having this, we're having a productive session. I don't think anybody's accused anybody of doing anything. We're trying to learn from one another. So, like I said, when we went through that fire, there were a lot of emotions, raw emotions. If you went out there, if you lost your property, if you were on some of the tours that I went, people lost everything. And that's devastating to people. But they need a productive way in a controlled environment to kind of air some of this out. And that's what we're doing. We haven't pledged to do anything here today. But the one thing we aren't going to do is ignore it. This is a teachable moment. Whether we all agree that everything's in place, that's fine. If there's changes that need to be made, that's fine. But the one thing that we don't do in this community is not address issues. So I respect your opinion. I'm glad you brought it up, but we aren't talking about that specific case. We're trying to think about, are there gaps in the system that we need to work going forward? And I appreciate your comment. You're going to have to be recognized at the microphone. But you just need to understand, don't accuse anybody in this room of doing anything because they're here. 2 people have spoken. So let's just be respectful of that. You're next, sir.
Hi, my name's Daniel. I know we got laws out there, state laws, county laws, everything out there, and I agree with them. And we're not here to change those laws. Everybody out here's got an opinion of what abuse to an animal means or to something else. So, and I respect those decisions. From my standpoint, I'd like to change it a little bit. And as citizens of this county, what can we do to be more vigilant to work with you folks in regards to possibly identifying or assisting you to identify situations of this nature that may require a look at and a decision made at your level?
And I'll open that up to anybody on the panel that wants to
I
address
think
that.
that's a really great opportunity that we have here. The more awareness we have about neglect of animals or children, as we've talked about earlier, you know, that's about reporting those situations and allowing, if it's the deputies who are going out to investigate that, or if it's in the Humane Society's, in our realm, our territory, then we can go out and investigate those. And that's really how all these cases come to our agency, by people having awareness, being concerned, and calling. And it doesn't mean every time that action's going to be taken. You know, there is a very step-by-step process that we want to do, because we're going to take animals, we want to make sure we have probable cause, that there really is a situation where that animal has to happen. You know, I've seen horses that are 25 years old. You know, their ribs may show, but they are under great vet care. They have documentation of that. You know, those people are taking great care of those animals, but they're geriatric. So, I mean, those are the types of investigations that we can do. We can get back to the complainant about what the situation is, why or why not that animal will be staying or not staying in that situation. That's a really great point. People can help by creating awareness and reporting.
Thank you.
Anybody else on the panel want to jump in, or I'll take another question?
Really, for the sheriff's office, I mean, I would mirror what she had said. Honestly, there really isn't a whole lot more that the community can do except be aware and to report. Unfortunately, I've also had the opportunity to communicate a lot with Department of Human Services, both with the elder abuse as well as child abuse. And that is how we get 99% of our calls, is through the community. Very, very seldom do we have a law enforcement officer responding to something and then realizing if there's child abuse, elder abuse, or in our case, what we're talking about today, animal abuse. So everything that you folks have been doing, you guys know your property, you guys know your neighbors, you know what is right and pretty much what's wrong. Now the question is, you know, are you reporting it? I would say for the majority of you, yeah, you're reporting it because you guys feel very strongly about this, and for that we appreciate it. And for the deputies and the investigators that are out there, please understand that these folks, both Humane Society as well as local law enforcement, are trained, and we are vigilant in looking at these cases, and we cannot always make that decision to take an animal. I mean, there are specific rules and regulations and procedures that we're going to follow. And state statute, honestly, as well as the Constitution, guides what we do on a daily basis.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Karen Marchman. I live here in Black Forest. I am a horse owner for 50 years at least, and I have a couple of issues to address. And the first I want to address to a statement that Ms. Stevens just made about laws and the connection between child abuse and animal abuse. I just found this on my news feed this morning. It's a statement from the FBI, and this is going to be nationwide. Unfortunately, they're not going to be able to do their tracking and get everything in place until 2016, but it is a start. And it reads, This is going to be a group, what they call a Group A felony, the following: intentionally knowing or recklessly taking an action that mistreats or kills any animal without just cause, such as torturing, tormenting, mutilation, maiming, poisoning, or abandonment. Included are instances of duty to provide care, in other words, shelter, food, water, care if sick or injured, transporting or confining an animal in a manner likely to cause injury or death, causing an animal to fight with another, inflicting excessive or repeated unnecessary pain or suffering, in other words, uses objects to beat or injure an animal. This definition does not include proper maintenance of animals for show or sport, use of animals for food, lawful hunting, fishing, or trapping. So this is a very important decision coming down that I think the Sheriff's Department needs to take note of, because it's going to give law enforcement officials the ability to perhaps apply stronger charges and felony charges to some of these more egregious situations. My second thing I would like to address is to the representative from the Sheriff's Department. I am involved with rescues nationwide in terms of help and support and donations and networking. I also privately rescue specifically thoroughbreds that came off the track, injured, or ended up at auctions where the killers are in various stages of starvation, and I rehab them. I have 5 in my barn right now who are there retired for the rest of their lives. Number one, I wish the Sheriff's Department, when they are called out, I appreciate the training that the Mounted Patrol has, but they are not vets. I really respectfully request that a vet go with them to that first call for evaluation. That's easy enough. If your contracted vet, who's contracted to the Sheriff's Department, cannot go or is out of town, there are many other vets, horse vets in this area who would be only too happy to go to evaluate. I think that needs to be a requirement. And second, I wanted to ask you specifically, is your Mounted Patrol representatives, are they familiar with refeeding syndrome? Have you ever heard of it?
Okay. Can I answer one question at a time?
Yes.
Okay, very good. First of all, in regards to the statement that you made concerning the new federal laws that they're looking at, I appreciate that, but what I would probably defer to is Ms. Stevens concerning state legislature, because the Sheriff's Office cannot enforce federal law. We can enforce state law, and we can enforce county ordinance. But under federal law, it would have to be a federal entity to enforce that. That does not necessarily mean, what I will say is, I know that a lot of federal laws are then also mirrored by state legislature. So I think that's something else that needs to be addressed in a different arena, or at least a different topic area.
Okay.
As for rehab, thank you for what you do. I do appreciate that, because without people that take on this type of care of these animals, we have to have people who are champions for our children, for our elders, and for our animals. Absolutely. So thank you for what you do. Now, to go to what you were asking about the vet, that's something that and as you can tell, I've been taking notes up here as well. Everything that you guys are putting forth, I want to also take back to my agency, my chain of command, and let them know what the voice of the people is. The biggest thing to remember, I think also, is that a lot of our calls that we go out on, whether it be a domestic type situation or a situation for animal abuse, not all these calls are legitimate calls, or are calls that we would necessarily ask a secondary opinion or agency to come out on. For example, oftentimes we get through Department of Human Services abuse allegations, but when either Department of Human Services or the Sheriff's Office investigators begin the investigation, we find out that these are not legitimate, or allegations are unfounded. So to have a veterinarian on call 24/7, or, I mean, essentially we get these types of calls anytime during the day or night. I'm not sure that is something that is technically feasible, but that's something I'm willing to bring back to.
So you would look into that?
Absolutely. As I said, I
Okay.
will bring that back to the sheriff's office for
Because
review.
I'd also like to see the sheriff's department work more closely with rescues in this area.
Sure.
Who
Well-
deal with this
Well,
all
what
the
I
time.
can tell you is that the sheriff's office does work quite a bit with rescues, and I don't want to take up too much time here, but we do work with community partners and rescues. I can tell you, we have a number of, oops, wrong one. We have a number of places that both will help us take animals that are law enforcement only places, as well as other rescues that will assist with other animals. Humane Society also is very works with us very well. You know, this actually does come back to the initial investigation, but part of the certification that our mounted unit, as well as our investigator for animal cruelty, has gone through. A lot of you folks are familiar with the Heineke body conditioning scoring chart. I am not, and I'm not going to stand up here and tell you I know anything about horses, because I don't. So to answer your question concerning my familiarization with the last thing that you had said, I'll have to ask that.
Refeeding?
Refeeding. I'll have to ask that of our mounted unit. My guess is that you're talking about guys that have been around horses literally all their lives.
Well,
and they're old people.
I have been astonished that people who have been around horses all their lives do not know about this.
I'm guessing what you're saying is you have to, you can't just start feeding a horse a ton of hay or
I'll give you a
anything.
handout.
Right. It's a progressive thing if they've been malnourished. is what you're
Yes,
saying.
and it's such a critical, delicate process, and surprisingly enough, and some people may gasp, the UC, University of California at Davis study that was done on this, a very complete study, came to the conclusion, based on their clinical observations, that the way to refeed a starved horse is to feed nothing but alfalfa hay in very small amounts, 6 to 8 times a day, no supplements, no grain because of starch and sugar, which causes insulin cascades. I mean, it's an incredibly complicated and scary process. If you start feeding grass hay and grain and senior and beet pulp right off the bat, in 3 to 5 days, they die of organ failure. So I printed off a whole lot of these and put them on the table. If anyone didn't get one and would like one, let me know. I'll email another to you. I'll give you one. And I just wanted to lastly say that the community, both local community and state and nation and international, were really galvanized by this. And I think that elected officials need to keep that in mind, because the ballot box is coming up, and we're not going to forget. We want this process improved. We want the bureaucratic red tape to thin out, because the ultimate victims in all these cases are the animals. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We'll go over here. Go ahead.
My name is Elaine Gagne. I'd like to follow on with what Daniel said, and that is about where we can go from here. I'm happy for this opportunity that we can look for a direction to take a step forward. And I looked at the law. I'm not a lawyer, but I thought the law was sufficient as it is. There are some pieces that I have a question for our veterinary representatives later, but there are a couple of suggestions that came out of a group meeting at my home. I'm representing those people. One is to further our own education about what a malnourished, and I'm speaking about horses in particular, horse looks like. As Jen was saying, you can see a horse's ribs, and they could be all right. There's a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being obese, and that's not very good, and 1 being ready to die. So we're looking for, how do you tell where a horse is in the middle? And if I'm going to propose this at our club, that is part of our education, that we have someone come and explain
what those conditions are and how we would recognize them. Because I myself have thought a horse was underfed, and he wasn't. It can happen to anybody who doesn't know. The second suggestion, this might seem a little pie in the sky, but I'd like to throw it out there anyway. It's been noted that the sheriff's office gets 4 to 5 calls a month, some of these calls being something like, I saw a horse blindfolded in the pasture. That's someone who doesn't know that a horse can use a fly mask in the summer. And then the sheriff's office has many, many things to do, and with a decreasing budget. What if there were a privately funded commission whose only job was to investigate these kinds of calls? And I understand, by the way, that the Humane Society is not, we're not in the Humane Society's jurisdiction, and it's only because of their good graces or some slivers of budget that we might even get some Humane Society attention. But back to this commission, that there may be funds available or made available for such a concerted effort strictly to deal with these kinds of abuse and neglect issues. The question that I had for our veterinarian representatives, in talking with my own vet, they are in a terrible position for these kinds of issues. They have a client, they have client confidentiality issues, they may see an abuse case, there's a lot of restrictions on them. I'm not sure what they are. I just think that the veterinarians hold the key to where we might go forward with similar cases. But I do want to focus on what we can do as a community to educate ourselves and do as much as we can to handle this problem.
I'd like to start just by talking about the Humane Society's role. So the Humane Society of the Pikes Peak region is contracted by El Paso County to do certain parts of the county, the parts that have the resolution for a leash law. And in those areas, we actually do go in and do animal cruelty investigations, and we'll follow through on those investigations. We also have a relationship with the Sheriff's Department, and we are on call. We have officers on 24/7, and the Sheriff's Department will go out and investigate a case, and they may decide they want assistance from our agency, and they'll call out animal law enforcement officers who can also go out and assist the Sheriff's Department. And we've been doing that for many, many years. You know, after the Black Forest fire, the county commissioners contracted us to continue to provide services in Black Forest through the end of last year, and then that contract ended. We've talked to county commissioners about potentially taking responsibility for the entire county, but obviously it is a budget issue. And I think Joe could talk about, hey Joe, can you talk about the commissions that we have at the Bureau of Animal Protection and how your officers work?
I can. I think the first thing is that I want to say is understanding the scope of this problem. I mean, we serve basically from the city of Centennial all the way down to the city and county of Pueblo. We investigate about 3,700 reports of animal cruelty and neglect, which results in about 9,500 to 10,000 responses. So the point's being made that this is not, you go in, you look at a situation one time, and you leave is very valid. It's going to take multiple attempts. This is a widespread issue. It goes on here in El Paso County, and I think I just applaud everyone for being here and wanting to address that. Specific to your question, Jan, we have authority that's granted to us from the county commissioners to enforce the ordinances within those areas of the county in which it applies. And roughly, Mark Shuffle West is roughly where it applies, but there are little pockets here and there that have elected to have the county ordinance apply in a specific neighborhood or a specific area. And then secondary to that, working with the Colorado Department of Agriculture, specifically Scott Dutcher and Kate Anderson over here, our officers are empowered through that agency to enforce state statutes around animal cruelty, ownership of a dangerous animal, as well as animal fighting and a host of other things. So it's really a partnership that allows that to happen. So they go in under that authority when conducting those animal cruelty investigations.
Thank you very much.
Could
Were you
I
finished?
hear
Oh.
something from our
Okay, go
veterinary?
ahead.
Want me to speak to the veterinary question? First of all, going back to your information about having veterinarians on site and having training, I just want to let you know that we do training for investigators, for animal control officers. We coordinate with Colorado State University Equine Sciences and put on a 2.5-day equine investigator short course. They talk about refeeding. We do train that. Although it's a process for later on, it's not usually involved in the initial investigation. But we do provide that kind of training. We use veterinarians, we use equine professionals to put that on. So we do have that as a statewide option for investigators. So we're trying to help in that regard. From a veterinarian perspective, I applaud you for your community efforts, because I used to be a private practicing veterinarian. I know what going out and talking to my clients and talking to other people is about. I've done investigations or worked with local law enforcement where I was in practice to try and help them as well. And so I think it's important to have the community support and have the community watching out for each other sometimes. Sometimes it's not always a who do I report to, but how maybe can I help this person? And so sometimes that can start there, but maybe it goes on. Maybe you can't help that person. I don't know. But it is tough for the veterinary practitioner in your community. So know that we're here from the state veterinarian's office. We're available to your investigators. I'm an impartial person who can come to your community and help. I don't have any clients here. So, you know, I can be more impartial and not feel like I'm going to lose clients. Number 2, there is a veterinary responsibility to report suspected animal cruelty. It's part of our statute. It's part of our Practice Act. So veterinarians who see things may try to help first, and that's okay. But if they suspect that things aren't going well, they actually have a duty to report. What happens after that is not up to them. All they have to do is report. To who? Law enforcement, local law enforcement, Humane Society, Sheriff's Department. They can call us at the state veterinarian's office, but we're going to refer them to their local agency first. Does that help?
It does, thank you. I'm sure that the veterinarians go through a whole host of situations that...
They do, and we don't get any training,
Yeah.
let me tell you. In vet school, this was not part of my training.
Well, that could be an addition right there,
Yep,
training.
that could be helpful. And we've actually had veterinarians come to our training that we put on with the Equine Sciences Department, because it's something they don't get necessarily in vet school. So I think it's helpful for that too.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Megan Miller. I work with Ruby Ranch Horse Rescue. I live in the Black Forest and I own horses. I am not a veterinarian. However, one of the things that we at Ruby Ranch have been discussing is the phrase immediate danger has been thrown around a lot. And I haven't ever really seen if the statute defines that. But in our view, you know, just because a horse isn't going to drop dead tomorrow doesn't mean that a horse may not be in a condition where it's experiencing permanent, long-term, life-changing damage, you know, both psychological and physical. I've got a couple other questions, but first I'd like you to go ahead and address that. I think maybe instead of focusing so much on what laws need to be changed, maybe the standard for what constitutes immediate danger should be something that should be looked at.
I'll field that one again. Essentially, and I guess I'm glad that you gave me this, because it gives me a segue into explaining a little bit about one of the things that we did change recently at the Sheriff's Office for procedure. When we talk about immediate danger, we actually go back to the statute, you know, care of the animal. So when our investigators initially go out, they look for food, water, they look for appropriate shelter for the species of the animal. They look for whether or not there's been any indications of physical abuse or dangerous situations in which the animal lives, or dangerous property where the animal lives. When it comes down to what immediate danger is, one of the things, obviously we take everything into totality of the circumstances, but as we were talking about before with the Heineke body scoring chart, a lot of people are very insistent that if an animal looks thin, then it must be being abused. So with our investigators, they go back to that chart as part of the investigation. And anyone who is in horses knows that this is a subjective type scoring chart. So it obviously goes down to, all right, with the office, for the longest time, we had used the scoring of 1 as being, okay, we need to call somebody out right now and get someone here. That has recently changed to where our scoring at a 2 or lower is now being looked at and saying, okay, we need to potentially call a vet, get a vet involved, or other resources, and say, is this something that needs immediate attention right now at a 2? Again, I'm not a horse person. This is to my, I'm getting this information from my investigators. I'm a supervisor, and part of my supervisory experience is over these types of cases, but I haven't done a whole lot of those cases. My main focus has been on abuse, crimes against children, elders, and persons, as well as organized crime. But I know what these guys have experienced, have investigated. I know they know what the DA's office needs to prosecute a case, and then what it takes to either remove animals or follow up and ensure that that the owners are complying with the standards that need to be met to care for those animals.
That leads nicely into my next question.
Okay.
You've spoken a lot about the training that your officers have, and I'm sure that they do. However, we see consistently that when your officers do the body scoring on a horse, and those horses are subsequently looked at by vets, that there's a real gap there, and that the vets generally score the animals much lower than your officers do. And I wonder if that's a training issue, or if that has something to do with something else, but I think that's something that also needs to be addressed.
Okay. That's something that I will bring back with me as well. What I can tell you is, in my limited experience, and you may have seen things that I don't know about, but I have not seen that sort of disconnect in between the scoring. But again, that's something I will bring back. I'll address that both with the
You might review the transcript from Thursday's hearing.
Okay. That's not something at this point that I'm willing to discuss.
Just because we're all here, I just want to clarify, what the law actually says and what it doesn't say. So the law does not use the terminology immediate danger. The law uses a 2-part standard. 1, there's probable cause for a violation, meaning the minimum care standards that are established by the law have in fact been violated. So an officer of the law goes out and makes that determination. And then the second part of that standard, what the law actually says is if that animal is endangered if left with the owner. Now, that is a very subjective standard, and the totality of circumstances have to be taken into consideration. There is no way you can say an animal, just because it's a body condition score of 1, is endangered, because that animal may very well be under the direct care of a veterinarian. And we want to put black and white standards on these types of things, but we cannot. And that's where I think we need to bring in veterinarian professionals. We need to bring in sometimes very well-trained farriers who can look at horses' hooves and say, is this causing pain? Is this something that is endangering, the animal if left with the owner? And of course, the other piece of that is, will the owner provide the care going forward, or do I have the staff resources to go out and ensure that that individual is providing the care? So want to make sure everybody understands what the law does say, and the way that we interpret those is our policies and procedures, and that may be different for different organizations, so I'm not trying to contradict what the sergeant has said or what the sheriff's department does or does not do, just simply what the law does and does not say, just so we're all on the same page.
Thank you.
Okay. Over there, yes ma'am.
My name is Anna Blake. I'm a property owner in El Paso County, and I'm a professional horse trainer by occupation. I have followed this story closely. A lot of my clients have talked to me about it. And I've contacted several of you up there, and I want to say I've gotten a great response. I've heard back. I've gotten emails back suggesting things. It's been great. And this is my concern, and this is the area I think needs to be looked at. As stories like this unfold, and you know, I'm not going to talk specifically about this one, but it unfolded like a lot of them do. And that is, the news story comes out, horse people who have owned horses their whole lives hear the story. Many of them contact their trainers to talk about it. Many of them contact their vets to talk about it. Our first line of defense, our first line, is our mounted patrol officers that arrive on the scene to make judgments and assess the case. And sometimes what happens, not all the time, but sometimes what happens is there's this huge community outrage about what appears to be going on that seems out of proportion for the mounted patrol officers who have come. So I was at the hearing on Thursday down at the court also. I thought the testimony was really great. I want to say I thought the judge was really great. I thought that would it be an assistant district attorney, is that who was trying the case? I think she did a really wonderful job. What the mounted patrol officer said there was that he was level 2 certified, and the certification is a 40-hour course, so he's been through 2 at the University of Missouri. What I heard her today is that there's a 3rd level. I don't think it's realistic to have a vet on call 24/7. I don't. But I think for me, what I see is a community speaking up and saying, I do not believe these people are well enough trained. And I guess I don't think they're well enough trained either. If there is a 3rd level, I want to know why all of our officers aren't 3rd level. And this assessment as they go in, I get it that it's complicated. I actually understand that. I own a 28-year-old horse. He looks horrible. And his feet are well trimmed, and I can show you everything I'm doing. I work twice as hard on that horse as any of the other horses in my barn. I want to believe that this first line of defense is one that, as a community member, I can have faith in. And I want to say that there are things that a veterinarian will pick up on. There are things that an equine professional will pick up on. And I just want to make sure, again, like Megan said, I want to make sure that the horse is being looked at from more than a body scoring standpoint. And I would like to see a lot more training in those officers.
Great. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
In response to the training, that again is something that I can take back to the sheriff's office. And please understand that when Humane Society comes out, when the sheriff's office responds, it's more than just the body scoring. I put that out there because a lot of questions have come to me about, you know, how is this investigated? And again, it's the totality of the circumstances, whether or not they're under vet care, the types of food, if there's food available, water. Everyone knows what water is very important to keep the horses well regulated, their body temperatures well regulated, whether or not their teeth need to be floated, you know, if a farrier needs to take a look at them. All this stuff is being looked at from our standpoint to ensure, and if there's question at that point in time, yes, I mean, we reach out to those additional resources as well.
So what I want you to know is the reason that your office got such an overwhelming number of calls from around the planet, the reason you heard from me twice. The reason this huge response came up is because there are a lot of us out here. Some of us are professionals. Some of us have owned horses our own lives. And from what you tell us, there are things that we know. And we know that colic isn't contagious. We know that amateur vet care will never take the place of actual vet care. So your challenge is that you've got a public here that's really, really well informed. And your mounted patrol has to be at least as well informed as I am.
Good point. Comment. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Karen Boucher. I also live in the Black Forest. I've listened to everyone today, and there's excellent points made. I think what I can do today is give you examples that have come my way and how the El Paso County Sheriff's Office has dealt with information that has been supplied to them with regard to animals that have not been well taken care of. And it's not just me alone. There's a group of us. I'm the one here today. However, before I address that, I want to make it clear that I do believe the laws are complete. I do believe we have some very, very good laws. I don't believe, however, that this county, El Paso County, has good policies and procedures. I believe that they can be improved, they can be changed. I think they have embedded this policy and procedure for many, many years. When people call about an animal problem, and today we're mostly talking about horses, yes, the deputy normally responds, as you have stated, from the sheriff's office. However, that deputy is just any deputy that's in that area on call. They may not have, and most of them don't have, any training when it comes to what is required. Case in point, about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I received a phone call from a friend who said there was a horse close by that was in very bad condition. And she drives past it. She lives within a few houses away, does not understand horses. But as she said to me, Karen, the water tank is upside down, or the water is frozen. There is no food out there. There is no care being provided, and there is no shelter. And the animals keep getting thinner and thinner. I got involved, excuse me, and yes, a deputy came out. Nothing, when a report was given back to us, not me in particular, they would be monitoring the situation. But we were asked to prepare by the detective's office information day by day, date and time, as to what we saw was happening to these horses and the care being provided with these horses. There were three of us, 3 ladies. I have a packet here in this folder about that thick where we continued, I did the faxing, we continued to send that information out. This went on for a good month and a half. Nothing was really being done. I think what you're finding, a lot of us in this community get upset because we report and another deputy goes out, and then there's another deputy goes out, and they're all different. And if it could be a situation where the same person or a group of people that had the training and the knowledge go out, that would be helpful. I know nothing really took place on this case. I know of another situation in early 2002. I happened to be called by a friend of mine that said she happened to be driving in the area of eastern El Paso County. And she said, Karen, these animals are in horrible shape. I went with her. She used a telephoto lens. She took pictures of these animals. The sheriff's office was contacted. Nothing was reported that they did. Calls were made. We continued to ask how things were progressing, if they could give us any information. Nothing happened. She decided that what we needed to do is try to get something done, similar to what happened with these horses. We went on a talk show, radio talk show, the two of us. We were both on the phone. We phoned in. This information was supplied. The talk show host was given pictures of these animals. And we had maybe an hour conversation. And hoping to get the public and the sheriff's office and people involved so that we could get something done with these animals. Again, the next day, I get a summons from the El Paso County Sheriff's Office to appear in court because I was now being charged with harassment. When that happens, we as the public, why do we want to speak out? But yet we do because we care. Yes, the minute that I went to my first appearance, the DA's office immediately dismissed that case. But that's how the sheriff's office handled that particular situation. And what I would like to do, since they're here, is show this panel pictures of those particular horses and this dog that were taken with telephoto lens. And you can see the outrage and why we went to a talk show, and yet nothing was done. I understand why this lady went to the news media. What I happened to learn is I just met this lady that went to the news media with these horses in Black Forest. I met her about 2 or 3 days later. Yes, I wanted to say thank you because I know how El Paso County Sheriff's Office handles policies and procedures. When I talked to her, I learned that this gal's only been in the state of Colorado since August. And the reason she went to the news media after calling the sheriff's office is because she already had information supplied to her that El Paso County is slow at responding to animal problems. Now, I'd like to show these to you, and I'd like to have you make some comments.
Well, we aren't going to comment on the pictures. You know, they can look at that. But did you want to respond?
The only response that I have, ma'am, is I cannot accurately respond to a case that's 12 years old without even knowing anything about the case.
I understand.
What I can respond to is our current state, the way the animal abuse investigations are run. And what I can tell you is that at this point in time, we have already taken an initial look at the procedures that are in place. I do know, and I don't know how many times I can reiterate the fact that the Sheriff's Office does rely upon other outside agencies as well as needed. If there is a specific issue that you wish to address concerning a particular case, then at that point in time I would suggest, if it's a recent case, unfortunately I believe 12 years ago is probably going to be outside the statute of limitations.
Understand.
But if there's a specific case that you wish to address, it's probably best to do it offline, either with myself, and I can get you in touch with the right people.
I think, though, that it is unfair that a private citizen should get a summons to go to court because they made a statement that they were not happy with the condition of those animals.
Ma'am, again, I
Now,
cannot speak.
I understand that, but I will say, what has been discussed today, I think has been very important. I believe there needs to be a more timely response to these issues. I also believe that when it comes to seizing these animals, I think there needs to be a change with what happens to these animals. The sheriff's office has 2 contracts out that I'm aware of. One is for a vet to look at these animals. That vet has been the same vet with them for quite a period of time. I'd like to see it be able to be opened up so that other vets could bid on that, so that if in fact they believe that that horse or whatever that animal is needs to be rated differently, that's fine. I have heard from many, many people that who is currently handling the contract, which is Dr. Parker, is the one that rates these horses or any animal. Not everyone agrees with his rating, and I even know professionals that do not agree with his ratings. I understand that contract has been in existence for a very long time. I'd like to see that be able to be opened up so other vets could bid on that situation. I'd also like to see a little bit of a change in procedure, that because when you seize an animal, it's normally because of abuse or neglect, and we know some of these ratings are low. Karen Marchman just spoke about the fact that these animals have to have special care in order to be able to eat again. I know for a fact that these horses, when they were taken, the place that was called for them to be housed at was not a rescue. It was the Callahan auction barn. And if Callahan had taken these animals, they do not have the training and the knowledge as to how to take care of abused animals. I believe that when you seize an animal, it needs to go to a facility that has the training to be able to care for these animals under the conditions that they're in, rather than the Callahan sale barn, because they do not have that position. I know, I do business with them, and I can, because I have cattle, I am a livestock owner, and I can tell you they do not have the facilities or the knowledge as to how to handle animals that don't have the proper feed and nutrition or the hoof care that they're going to need in order to survive.
Okay.
I would like to see that addressed and changed to where the contract with the Callahan auction house is changed so that these animals have a chance of living a better life.
Okay, ma'am, thank you. Do we have a question over here?
Yes, Mickey Althouse. And I appreciate that you're looking for takeaways, Commissioner Lathan. I appreciate what you said, that it's not just about horses, it's about animals, it's about children, it's about elders. And I appreciate that you're looking at the policies and procedures going away from here. But I just want to offer something up for food for thought. And this is just some really short excerpts from the horse's prayer. To thee, my master, I offer my prayer. Feed me, water me, and care for me. And when the day's work is done, provide me with shelter, a clean, dry bed, and stall wide enough for me to lie down in comfort. Always be kind to me. Keep me well shod. Examine my teeth when I do not eat. I cannot tell you when I am thirsty, so give me clean, cool water often. And finally, O my master, when my useful strength is gone, do not turn me out to starve or freeze, or sell me to some cruel owner to be slowly tortured and starved to death. But do thou, my master, take my life in the kindest way, and your God will reward you here and hereafter. You will not consider me irreverent if I ask this in the name of him who was born in a stable. Amen. Thank you.
Sir, you're up.
Hi, I'm Dr. Randy Parker. I'm an equine veterinarian. I've been in this area for 24 years. I'm not used to speaking in situations like this, but I thought I could show up and see. I don't really know what to say. First, I don't have a contract with the El Paso County Sheriff's Department. I do some work for the El Paso County Sheriff's Department when they ask me, but I don't have a contract. I know that other veterinarians do work for the Sheriff's Department as well. You know, even listening to what's going on in this room, there's been more misinformation, even specifically about the case here in Black Forest that you know nobody can really comment on. You know, there is a veterinarian available 24 hours a day, and because there isn't a contract for a veterinarian, but I've got 2 phones in my pocket right now, and you know, I'm available. There's also there's other very good veterinarians in the area that are available, but I guess it's a very difficult topic, I think, to address, and I'll bet in 50 years, if this building is here in 50 years, we're probably, people are going to be, discussing the same or similar problems, because it's so huge and encompassing. I've done some work. I don't, specifically, I wish I could comment about some of the cases. I can tell you that I've been out on cruelty to animal cases in the middle of the night in blizzards. I remember I was on, the difference in Calhan Road and Calhan Highway. One of them is paved and one isn't, and I was supposed to be on one of those roads, and it was late at night and there was a blizzard. I couldn't tell where I was, so I had to dig a hole in the road to try to figure out what road I was on. So we do sometimes get called out in difficult situations and situations that just plain aren't Friday. Friday isn't a difficult situation. The laws, I don't know. The laws for cruelty to animal. I don't know if we need more laws or if the laws that we have are sufficient. Because I think if we have more laws, then we've got more laws. Is that a good thing or not? If the laws that we have are awfully broad, there is no verbiage on immediate danger. There just isn't. There's a lot of the deputies. They have to determine different things about each different cases, and I understand that. I also I guess basically my point is. And what I wanted to say is that I think that the Black Forest case was handled correctly, and maybe that's not a very popular thing to say, but I was involved in it, and we had by Monday we had a plan to go out there. On Friday there was absolutely no plan. We didn't know what to do, and there was some horses that were alive, and we knew that, and there was also a lot of deceased horses out there, and so we wanted to do what we could for the live horses, but we also wanted to do what was best and try to find out what the heck happened to the deceased horses. And so I know specifically I can't go into it, but there has been some misinformation already just on that case there. But I guess I'd like to say that yeah, everything is not handled, especially as we see it, is not handled well with anything, with children. My sister does foster care, and I know a lot of issues with that. And then horses, not everything is handled, but I think it's handled as best as you can. And with such a volume that's out there, it's crazy. And it's very difficult. And then again, in 50 years, I think that we're going to have similar problems. And I don't think that there's one fix. And so I think coming and talking like this and talking about things like this is really important. But if you think that there is one answer or 10 answers that are going to fix it, I think that that's just going to be wrong. But I guess also what I wanted to say is I have no part of the El Paso County Sheriff's Department, but I do think that it was an extremely difficult situation on that Friday. And I think the right decisions were made. And again, I don't think that always the right decisions are made, but I don't know what other decisions could have been made. I guess the only thing that I would add is that, you know, the El Paso County Sheriff's Department, they've got a lot of work to do. And I know for sure that all the sheriff's deputies, that wasn't their only thing to do that day, that Monday. I know that there were also investigating 2 lost children, you know, and there was phone calls in the middle of all of that craziness and all of that terrible situation with all those horses. I know also that they were also trying to investigate 2 children that were missing, you know, and so it was difficult, and it was a difficult day, and I'm sure it was a difficult day on that Friday evening as well. But I would just support the El Paso County Sheriff's Department in the way that they did handle it, that there's a lot goes on behind the scenes that I think that a lot of people just don't see and don't understand, and maybe or plain just don't take into account on some of these situations. I guess the only thing that I would add is after all of my additions that I was going to add, but
this is number 5.
Yeah, five things to add. Okay,
and last one.
Last thing is that, you know, it is. I'm sure it's difficult for the El Paso County Sheriff's Department. I wish that there was some other agency that had complete control over an investigation of animal cases, which there isn't, and I don't know if there's any way that could happen, but it sure would be. And I don't know if I can't imagine the Sheriff's Department, if they want to keep investigating animal cruelty, or if there's some other agency that specifically could do that. But I know that it seems like El Paso County Sheriff's Department is real busy, and I know that day they were busy, and that's the only thing that I would add is that it'd be nice if somebody else that was specifically in charge of it maybe could be in charge of that sort of thing. So I don't know. That's all I really had to say
Thank you.
to come up here today. So.
Ma'am, you're next.
My name's Becky Shove. I'm a horse owner, pet owner, and I really do appreciate this forum, but I want to change focus just a moment on public health because I am curious. Out here in Black Forest, a lot of us live on smallish lots, 5 to 10 acres maybe. There's heavily treated areas where you don't necessarily see what's going on next door. And did I understand correctly earlier, you said there's no law anymore about disposing of dead livestock, was that right? Because I have a question regarding that.
Is there the other microphone on? There you go. That was
I'll answer that question, or attempt to. And I've had good conversations with the Colorado Public Health and Environment, who's our sister agency at the State Health Department. But when it's solid waste, and deceased animals are considered solid waste by definition, you are allowed to bury on your property. However, there's quite a bit of paperwork that is involved through engineering and processes to determine that groundwater or drinking water is protected in public health. Now, talking with them now, I said, well, okay, what happens if you have one deceased family dog or a cat or horse or whatever? It seems to me that would be pretty egregious that we'd have to go through that process, and it is. So they've set together what we have guidelines on how proper burial of your deceased pet or animal or livestock and how that would be done on your property to protect neighboring wells, our groundwater, and public health. So we have those guidelines set, and that's typically for a small amount, maybe a couple horses, a cow, or something like a pig. Now, in an event where we have a natural disaster, where there's many unfortunate deaths, then we work together with the State Health Department to assess what could be properly done, whether those could be transported off, maybe to other areas where they could be disposed of properly to protect public health. So in those cases of 1 or 2 animals, we have guidelines, we have those prepared and to folks to protect. They basically don't put them in groundwater and keep them 150 feet away from neighboring wells or your own well, and make sure that they're buried with 2 feet of cover. So those are the real kind of keys to public health protection. But when it's many animals, there's definitely a process to determine how do we go to the next steps so we too have that public health protection.
Okay, thank you. So what is the impact to our water supply, since most of us are on wells, and to public health? And we, as horse owners, we've all been very aware of the fly situation this year and how we needed to be extra diligent because of an illness. What is the impact on the health if you've got a situation where there are a large number of dead and decomposing animals on a property, or even a situation where a hoarder or a hobby farm that has an excessive number of animals?
So you've heard a lot today that we'd have to take in all the facts of that situation. It'll be the same way. How many animals? How far are they away from water wells? Where is the groundwater table? And in Black Forest, it can be right at ground, or it can be much deeper in the alluvial fill. So a lot of that would be factored in to determine what the risk is based on whatever event is. So in this case, we have not been given the green light to actually assess that risk. If we're asked, we will certainly do that to determine if it's okay to bury or do those need to be removed based on those factors. And again, groundwater table, wells, how far they are away, those kind of things all factor in. Size of the lot, small of the lot, those all get factored in, kind of a matrix of determining the risk of public health and water quality protection.
Okay, and who would we contact if we had an animal, a large animal that passed away and we wanted to bury it on our property? Who would we contact?
You could start with my office, and we'll certainly work with State Health Department and Department of Ag, and that's El Paso County Public Health, and I've got my card and flyers to give you our contact information.
Okay, and in situations where there's an excessive number of animals or too many decaying animals, the sheriff's department, is that who we call?
If you're looking at burial and...
No, if we're concerned about a neighboring property or something in the community.
So you're concerned...
Would it be the sheriff's office we call if we were concerned about public health concerns because of decomposing animals or too many animals?
You would call our office, Public
Your
Health.
office,
Now,
okay.
if there's an investigation going on, we'll be talking with the sheriff's office, because we don't want to intrude
Right,
or complicate
right.
the investigation.
Right,
So
I'm just, for future reference, I'm just
Sure.
curious. This has all brought up questions.
call your local health department. We're there to, if we don't know the answer, we'll try to get the answer for you.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
And just so you know, we have time for about maybe 2 or 3 more questions, and then I want to give the panel the final comment to be able to just, based on everything they've heard, if they wanted to leave us with some closing comments. So we have time for about 3 more questions. So, ma'am, go ahead.
My name is Sherry Maester. I live in Black Forest, and a few years ago I reported neighbors that were not feeding their horses. And because we're in the forest, it's a huge to-do to try to figure out what department we call. I called the sheriff department. They said contact the Humane Society. The Humane Society said, no, it's not us. Anyway, I think there's huge gaps in who's responsible for what. It took me 2 years to get those horses taken away, which finally happened. And I agree with what also has been said. There needs to be more consistency, whether it's Humane Society, Sheriff Department, on training these people. I would get deputies out saying, and this was in the dead of winter, obviously no pasture, there's going to be no grass, nothing. They had no food for them. And the deputies would say, I don't know horses, I don't know them. Their heads are down, they're eating. That was the response I got from deputies over and over again. I took them to my barn. I have 2 horses, one overweight, one thin, because they are hard to feed. And I told them, okay, this is what a normal horse looks like. Even my thin horse on that scale, my thin is a 4. And they were way lower than that. And again, it took me 2 years to get those horses taken away. And I'm not seeing, much better today. We still have people out there that have too many horses for the property, which again goes back to it's a safety hazard for your water issues. And dog complaints, we'll call and the deputies will say, well, if it's bothering you, it bothers us. We'll come take care of it. And then you can call a different deputy and he'll say, that's the Humane Society needs to handle the dog issues. My daughter lives in Falcon and she's dealing with it right now with dog issues, and she cannot get anybody to take her serious. on barking dogs. So it's a kid problem, it's a dog problem, it's horse problems. It's just all the way around.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name's Laura Easom, and I've lived in Black Forest since, early 90s. I love my community. I love my sheriff's department. I love my fire department. And I appreciate all of you guys coming out here today and taking the time to talk with us and having this town hall meeting. It's greatly appreciated. I see it as a positive that everybody's here, but it also speaks volumes that something's broke. Something's definitely broke that we're here. And there's not a lot of confidence with the sheriff's department and how, as you know, it's handled as far as animal welfare out here. And I think that's really, really sad. There's been a multitude of cases where nothing happened. And the lady out on Bomer here a few years ago where all those animals was repetitively called. Nothing happened. All I'd like to say is, we know it's not the law. We get that. We don't need to change that. But there's all these people here, and there's 1,500 emails you got from people that aren't even, residents here, that care about what's going on. I would hope that you would take advantage of that. And the sheriff's department, as far as the procedures, you said you'd take back to them, recommendations. How will we know those are going to be changed? And one of the reasons that there was such a volume of outcry over this is because there's not faith that it's going to be taken care of. And also when we'd hear the news. I know I'm all over the place, but I just want to get it all out there. In the news, we'd hear things like Anna had said, that we know better. There's just some spinning going on. So with all the people that are here, we want to be here, we want to help. So if the sheriff's department needs help, please let us help. I know there's legalities of that. If there's, Dr. Parker mentioned, if there's some kind of group that we can organize, even if it's, grassroots in our area, that's fine. Everybody else can try and figure out their other areas, but we need to start here and we need to fix what we can here.
Thank you. Last question.
My name is Susie Witter, and I live in the Black Forest, and I'm also involved with Ruby Ranch Horse Rescue and on their board. I think what I just heard here is one of the reasons for the huge outcry is that people have not felt effective when they have reported possible abuse cases. My hope is from this horrific situation with Dual Peppy and the rest of the horses is that these animal lovers that are in this room and that sent emails and made phone calls, that they will stay active and continue to offer their support and awareness to this situation and many other situations. This was a horrible thing to hear about, but it's not unusual. There is a case this Wednesday in Division B of our El Paso County courts that involves 25 to 30 horses. I personally was on the property. The environment is just disgusting. The horses are skinny. There are at least 4 studs running with mares and yearlings. Their charges are, this person is up on 2 different charges. This case started in the summer. It was postponed once. It was set for trial September 24th and is now coming in October, the middle of October. But what we need to do is let the people, the district attorney's office who's bringing this to trial, let anyone we know that we are willing to help. We come to court, sit in, get more knowledgeable on the process. But believe me, it's not unusual. Thank you.
Thank you. What I want to do now is just allow any of the panel members, we'll start at the very end, and we'll just work our way down based on what you've heard. If you wanted to add any comments, you don't have to, but if you just wanted to say a few things, and then I'll close it out. I'll start down there. Yeah, no pressure.
Everybody's looking.
Well, I guess I should kind of clarify what our role as far as the Bureau of Animal Protection is within the Department of Agriculture and the State Veterinarian's Office. The Bureau of Animal Protection commissions agents across the state to do these types of investigations. We have, many of them are with the Humane Society here and everything. So we do, another thing that I heard people talking about was education, and Dr. Anderson referred to our educational opportunities for law enforcement and everything. I guess one thing that I could mention is that we are in the process of elevating those requirements for our agents. And that should be complete and enforced or enacted by the first of the year.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to thank everybody for coming out today on behalf of animals in our county. This is so amazing to see so many people supporting the well-being and the health of the animals. And I know it takes a lot of time and effort to do this, but thank you so much for your concern and your work. The Humane Society is here to help. However, we can be of service to the Sheriff's Department or to the county commissioners. We want to see this solved. We're very frustrated when we can serve on one side of the road and not on the other.
So are we.
I reiterate that. It's amazing. Thanks for everybody being here. I learned a lot today. But from a public health perspective, if you ever have questions on your well water, your drinking water, give us a call. We have a laboratory. There's different tests that we can run, suggest to run. There are some costs. We try to keep those as low as possible. You have questions about your septic system. You have questions about water quality in general. That's your health department. Give us a call. We're here for you. Don't ever hesitate to get on our website or whatever, but definitely water quality and protection of our drinking water is a core public health program. We definitely want to make sure we are aware of any issues that are potential, that we can prevent them before becoming a real issue. So never hesitate to call us.
Thank you. I got away without saying much today, but I just want to say I took notes here, and I didn't hear anything really immediately that the county commission could do legally speaking, given that there are several laws already in place. These are state statutes. Certainly I researched this quite a bit on the local level. There are no local ordinances that the county commission could pass that would affect this issue directly. With that said, I do have some additional thoughts and comments that I've written down and from you all, and I'm certainly willing to discuss that further with our county commissioners and see if there's some other things that we can do from the county administration side. So thank you all.
I'll take this one. Thank you. Well, thanks so much for being here today. Of course, we all look at the laws, and I think as you heard, a wide variety of opinion today. Our state ag department just said that they're going to up the requirements, and that didn't take a law. That's the state ag department saying we're going to do our thing. I do see perhaps one or two areas, and Paul Lundeen is going to be in November your new representative, and Paul and I are texting if you saw. We're going back and forth in terms of there are some opportunities and some holes here that I see to work with state ag, and one I think is the education that our veterinarian talked about in terms of school, in terms of education and how to spot abuse. I mean, these are you veterinarians that are graduating and getting out of college, and I think these are important things. The other thing I also heard is, in the area of child abuse and welfare, we had a state ombudsman. I'm not a real fan in terms of the whole state ombudsman because you start getting into some kind of crazy stuff. But I do see there are openings, and this will be Daryl and your county commission's area, in terms of you can't have vigilante groups, so to speak. I mean, people might go, oh, is it, a local community who has probably got the most education in the, a huge amount of education in the state, to say to our sheriff's department, we can help you, we can do something. There probably is a role for the county commission, I think, and or locally for us to look, because the state laws are very local. There's wide authority on local control. And I think it's worth, in our DA, we've got, Dan May's department and our friends here, they really are excellent when it comes to working together and locally working together. And so I want to see how we can make that happen. And the other thing I would point out, that anytime we do pass a law, I get a phone call from Daryl saying, and how do you expect us to pay for it, right? And I passed the law that said, you can't pass a law without our county commissioners weighing in, okay? And so I'm not sure, I've even asked every year, and are we obeying this law? Because I'm not sure we see that happening. But I will tell you that I have no doubt that when our sheriffs, Dr. Parker so very aptly said, that same day you had 2 cases of children missing. And on that very day in the sheriff's department, you'll get phone calls about abuse. And some guy just maybe whacked, his wife, and you've got the horses over here, and you've got this going on over here. You guys do a yeoman's job. On the budgets that we have, I just want to say it's insane. And you do an excellent job, and I know we've got some holes that we can fill and some great people here, but it's not all perfect. I'm just thrilled that I've been able to represent the most amazing district, I would tell you, in the entire state, because we have such a highly educated population and people who get out and do things. Thank you for people who want to point out abuse. Thank you for speaking up. Thank you, because I think, Daryl, thank you for today. I just think we should get miles further down the road, mostly because the people here will make it happen. So thank you. I appreciate it. And Paul Lundeen, hate to pick on him, but he's going to be the one after me helping you on these issues. So there we go.
So, well, obviously my boss, Dan May, is sitting here as well. I know that he's an animal lover. I have to say, though, I've spoken to several of you. You've called and emailed. I am so heartened by all of you, your efforts and everything that you're doing. I know I'm a longtime advocate for animals, and a lot of people know that about me. Finally, when people are speaking up for those who have no voice, no choice, it really, it brings tears to my eyes, and thank you all for doing it. I would say I hope that this continues. I hope, Commissioner Glenn, thank you so much for having this, for hosting this, and let's plan on doing it again and seeing what we can do to move forward, make some progress. It's a huge problem, but perhaps we can start chipping away. Realistically, I think it's an important thing. This is a very important start, and I'm just so grateful to each and every one of you who've taken the time to contact me at the office. And I'm happy to hear from you. I have to say, too, Dan May has read every single one of those emails that came in. They all matter to him. He's the most caring about animals. So thank you, and I hope to continue to hear from you in the future.
As a representative of the Sheriff's Office, I also wanted to thank the community as a whole, because without your support and also without your feedback, law enforcement, the panel members up here and their individual agencies, Commissioner Glenn, we cannot make strides and improvements. I did hear a lot of things that I believe, I took notes on, and I believe many of those items are actionable. These are things that will be coming back to the Sheriff's Office, and what I want you to know is that your voice is heard. And I think that's one of the biggest things that Commissioner Glenn believed that this forum would allow for. So this information will be coming back. Please understand that everyone at the Sheriff's Office, you have a lot of good people doing a at times very difficult job, and we are all working to the best of our ability to ensure that these issues are aptly addressed. And so I do thank everyone on the panel as well, and I thank you again.
I just want to thank Commissioner Glenn, not only for this, but for taking on the hard issues. I mean, I believe you come straight at it. I want to thank Kit Carson Riding Club for hosting this. I mean, I think it's It's a perfect setting for this type of a discussion, but mostly I want to thank you all for letting your voice be heard, and echo what the other panel members have said, is that I don't want to be having this discussion 50 years from now. I have seen much progress, and myself and my staff are in the trenches, and every time I see progress, it's because the community gets behind something. I mean, I think this is democracy in action. I think this is the way the system's supposed to work, and I just ask, that you continue to help us, build a community where animals are cared for and valued. And that's what we as the Humane Society are all about, and we're happy to support this effort in any way that we can. And but change does not happen without you all doing this, and taking the first step and having this conversation is a huge victory for the welfare of animals in this community, and we stand ready to do whatever we can to continue those efforts. So thank you all.
Well, in wrapping this up, I really want to thank our panel members here. I didn't have to twist their arms. They came here because they care about your community. And this is the one time I get to say the phrase, we're the government, we're here to help. So it's one of these times where we want to make sure that we do that. I know but again, and it's, I really applaud each and every one of you for having a respectful dialogue, because that's important, because there was a lot of concerns, and you respected the fact that there is an ongoing investigation, and it would be inappropriate to essentially talk about that. There's a process that's going to take care of that. From the very beginning, everybody up here, they made a commitment to how do we move forward as a community. And if you go back and you think about what we went through, 2 straight years, fires, floods, we've learned how to come together as a community. This is the type of forum where we want to do that. I'm going to make sure that our public information officer, that we post this online. Please share this with people, because I know you have a fabulous network. I want to make sure people understand that this information is available. And we are going to try to follow up with this and make sure that we're going to continue to move forward as a community. So I want to thank everybody for being here today. And if you have any questions, we'll stick around, but this is the end of our meeting. Thank you.